Every person who has ever lived has faced one unavoidable question. What happens when we die? It's a question that has inspired religions, shaped civilizations, comforted the grieving, and challenged scientists for centuries. Most of us assume there are only two possible answers. Either someone survives death, or everything simply ends. But what if the evidence suggests the answer isn't quite so simple? Over the past several decades, physicians, neuroscientists, psychologists, and consciousness researchers have gathered observations that challenge one of science's oldest assumptions. Could consciousness continue after the brain stops functioning? Today, we're going to examine the strongest evidence, not to tell you what to believe, but to explore what the evidence actually suggests. Welcome, I'm Stephen Hawley Martin. This channel explores some of humanity's biggest questions. What is consciousness? Can artificial intelligence ever become truly aware? Does consciousness survive death? And what does modern science suggest about the true nature of reality? These questions deserve thoughtful discussion because they affect every one of us. Let's begin with the biggest question of all. For more than a century, modern neuroscience has operated under a fundamental assumption. The brain creates consciousness. According to this view, everything we experience, our memories, thoughts, our personality, emotions, and the sense of self we have, is produced by approximately 86 billion neurons exchanging electrical and chemical signals. When the brain changes, our experience changes. A stroke can alter personality. An injury can erase memories. An anesthetic can eliminate conscious awareness. These observations suggest that the brain plays an essential role in consciousness, and that when the brain stops functioning, consciousness must disappear. For many scientists, this conclusion seems straightforward. Case closed. But is it? Perhaps not. Because when observations fail to fit the prevailing theory, scientists have to take a closer look. And over the last 50 years, researchers have encountered observations that are surprisingly difficult to explain. Imagine a patient whose heart has stopped. No pulse, no measurable circulation. Doctors are working frantically to restore life. If consciousness is entirely produced by the brain activity, then one would expect little or no consciousness experienced during this period of time. Yet thousands of people revived after clinical death have reported vivid experiences. Near-death experiences, often called NDEs, have now been studied for decades. Researchers such as Dr. Bruce Grayson at the University of Virginia have developed standardized methods for evaluating these reports. Cardiologist Dr. Prim van Loven documented similar experiences among cardiac arrest patients. Psychiatrist Dr. Ian Stevenson spent much of his career investigating children who appeared to remember previous lives. No single case proves that consciousness survives death. Scientists rarely work that way. Instead, researchers look for patterns, and certain patterns appear repeatedly across cultures, religions, and countries. People often describe leaving their bodies and encountering a brilliant light. Many report experiencing profound peace. Often they recall reviewing significant moments from their lives. Many return profoundly transformed, less fearful of death, and more compassionate toward others. Skeptics have proposed alternative explanations: oxygen deprivation, medication, hallucinations, dreamlike states. These possibilities deserve consideration, but many researchers argue that none of these objections fully explains every documented case. The debate continues, but it is no longer possible to dismiss the subject of NDEs as mere fantasies. One possible explanation has become increasingly interesting. Imagine an old-fashioned radio. If you smash the radio, the music stops. But did destroying the radio destroy the broadcast? Or did it simply destroy the receiver? Some scientists have proposed that the brain may function less as a generator of a consciousness and more like a receiver or interface that allows consciousness to interact with the physical world and the physical body. This idea has appeared in many different forms throughout history. It remains controversial, and it has not been proven, but it offers an intriguing framework for understanding observations that otherwise remain difficult to explain. If consciousness persists independently of the brain, then damaging the brain would naturally affect how consciousness is expressed, without necessarily destroying consciousness itself. Whether this hypothesis ultimately proves correct remains to be seen, but it deserves thoughtful investigation rather than immediate dismissal. You might ask, why does any of this matter? Why? Because the answer changes everything. If consciousness ends completely at death, then life has one kind of meaning. If consciousness continues, life may have an entirely different meaning. How we define success, how we treat other people, how we respond to suffering, even how we understand ourselves. These aren't merely scientific questions, they're deeply human questions, and they deserve our best thinking. Science has transformed our understanding of the universe by asking difficult questions. Sometimes the greatest discoveries begin not with answers, but with better questions. Perhaps consciousness is entirely produced by the brain. Perhaps it isn't. At this point, honest inquiry requires intellectual humility. The evidence continues to grow. The research continues. And perhaps the most important discovery of the coming century won't concern distant galaxies, but the true nature of consciousness itself. If today's discussion interested you, I've spent many years exploring these questions in great depth. My book, You Are Eternal, examines the scientific, philosophical, and historical evidence surrounding consciousness and life after death. If you'd like to continue the journey into the nature of reality itself, my book, Beyond the Matrix, explores how consciousness may fit into a much larger picture. You'll find links to these books in the description below. In our next episode, we'll examine another fascinating question. Does the brain actually create consciousness, or could it simply receive it? The answer may reshape how we think about ourselves forever. Until then, please hit the subscribe button and keep asking questions, because discovery begins with curiosity.